Good evening, everybody, and welcome to my Tuesday night, 6 o'clock, live Principles of Good Health series. So here we are on another Tuesday, on another dull day in May. Hope we get some better weather soon here in the UK, and hope it warms up soon, especially as we are limited in going abroad and having our holidays. So, first of all, just a very quick thank you for everybody taking part in my auction that has just finished. A little sneaky say that we have raised just over £400. So I am thrilled about that. And I will be doing more things towards the Churn charity later in the year. So more things to be announced about that. And thank you for your patience, because I know I've been sending out lots of messages about this over the last 3 weeks now. So thank you for your patience. And I will be getting back into talking about other things and promoting other things. And my newsletters will be full of healthy things in the coming weeks and months ahead. So tonight, I decided to talk about vegetarianism because this week is National Vegetarian Week. I had to look up a little bit about it. It's devised by the Vegetarian Society, no surprise there, to encourage people to go meat-free, and I should include fish there, animal-free really, for 1 week. And just to try out more vegetarian dishes and to show that it's not boring. Well, there's one thing I can be absolutely certain about, is that vegetarian dishes are the last thing that can be considered boring, but I guess it's just knowing what you can do with them. And I know some people are more interested in vegetarianism. People are very concerned about the planet and climate change. And I know there can be different views, believe it or not, about the impact of animals and climate change. But I think we can be certain that, yes, and I would take the view that we certainly should be not eating a predominantly, meat-based diet, and vegetables and different plant foods should have a much higher focus and intake than what a lot of people do today. But of course, there are some people that are going vegetarian because they think it's the healthiest option. They do it for a health reason. But as one thing I can be sure of in all my years of experience, that's 12 years now, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of clients in 12 years. And there's one thing I can be sure of, and that is the fact that vegetarians do not, at no fault to their own, necessarily have the best diet. In fact, I've seen some atrocious diets over the year, possibly because some people have gone vegetarian just from an ethical animal welfare point of view and decide not to eat animals without really then taking the time to think about how they can eat more healthily. But there are, of course, those that choose to go vegetarian, think they're doing it healthily, have tried really hard, but I can still see where things need to be tweaked, where there could be nutrients missing, where the diet isn't particularly balanced. And that's what I thought I would talk about today. Just very briefly, the words veganism is used a huge amount these days. People are going vegan, as vegetarian. And just in case you're not absolutely sure, and I know there's some confusion, but the real key difference between these two is the fact that a vegetarian won't consume and eat animal products, but they will eat the byproducts like the dairy, milk and cheese, etc., yogurt, and eggs, because that's not having to kill the animal. And very often they will still wear leather shoes and a wool jumper. Whereas a vegan, and also honey, people who are a vegetarian would also eat the honey. They're not having to kill the bees, let's say, to get the honey. Whereas a vegan does not want to interfere with animals or the animal welfare. They just do not believe in consuming animals or their byproducts, and they would never a true vegan would never ever consider wearing leather shoes, or having wool-based products or anything that's from an animal at all. So I thought I'd list some reasons here, or not reasons, some ways in which we can make sure that a vegetarian diet is as healthy as it can be. How can we make sure it's really, really healthy? I thought I'd start by talking about the macronutrients. Now, macronutrients are the ones that we absolutely have to take from our diet. They are the proteins, they are the carbohydrates, and they are the fats. So I'll talk about each one of those in turn. But the most important I want to talk about, not the most, but one of the key considerations here is about protein intake. Because when we give up animal meat and fish, they are high quality, or should be high quality, high dense protein foods. They are also known as what we call complete proteins. What that actually means is that they contain every essential amino acid. When you consume a piece of meat or when you go and consume a piece of fish, you don't have to stop and think, oh, you know, am I getting my arginine or tryptophan or whatever it may be, the amino acids from this particular food that I'm eating, and they're called essential amino acids because the body can't make them. You don't think about that. Whereas when you go for plant-based protein foods, they are not complete proteins. They are going to be missing some of those amino acids, which is why when you choose protein foods on a vegetarian diet, although I know you can still eat eggs and dairy, you need to think just that little bit harder to make sure you're getting a range of plant-based foods. So the good news, first of all, is that you eat the eggs and you would be eating maybe goat's milk and cheese, sheep's milk, cheese, maybe cow's milk and cheese, although I'd prefer the former rather than the latter. And you know, they are good animal proteins, easy to consume in the diet. Lots of things you can do with eggs, lots of things you can do with different types of cheeses, like in different types of yogurts, and you know, easy. And we've been eating them for years, so we know what to do with those. So that's good. The other sources, plant-based sources of protein foods, are all your pulses, like your chickpeas and your kidney beans and lentils and nuts and seeds and their butters, because you can buy some fabulous nut butters these days. The other things that you can eat are soya, and I would try and go as much as possible for the fermented soya sources, not the unfermented. And just a very brief explanation is that when we turn to think about the Eastern diets where they consume a lot of soya, they're consuming fermented soya. So your natto, tempeh, miso, they are fermented soyas. They're a lot stronger flavour, but they are considered to be better for our health by having those sources. Probably I could do a whole talk on that on another day, but that's just my view. You could eat some tofu. It isn't a fermented soya, but as a way of getting more protein, variety into your diet, then do eat a little bit of tofu. Quinoa is well, we think of it as a grain, but it's not. And it's actually quite a good protein source that you could eat. And whilst you know, you may think, you can't believe I would say this being a nutritional therapist, but I do encourage some clients to eat corn, which is more of a processed type protein food. And the reason being is I want to make sure they're getting enough protein in their diet. Now, when we think about protein, the average person needs between about 50 and 70 grams of protein a day. It's quite a lot. And it's quite a lot because we need it to make our tissues, repair our tissues and our cells. We need it to make hormones. We need it to make enzymes for the body to function, like digestive enzymes to break down our food. We need it to make neurotransmitters for the brain. We need it for our bones, for our skin, for our tendons and ligaments. Oh, I can't think of the word. It's gone from me. Connective tissue, that's the word I'm looking for. They all require protein for the structure of these. So we need about 50 to 70 grams a day. And, you know, if we're not consuming that, then the body is going to struggle to perform all its different functions, make strong bones, create neurotransmitters like serotonin that keep us calm and happy. So we do need quite a lot. So when we start to take the animal proteins out of our diet, you're going to have to work just that little bit harder to make sure you get them all in your diet. Now, what about fats? Now, we need our fats, another macronutrient. Fats do not make us fat. Certain fats help us to burn fat. Our cell membranes are surrounded by a layer of fat to help keep the cells permeable, allowing nutrients in and toxins out. Our nerve fibers are surrounded by a fatty layer to help fire electrical impulses. Our brain is 60% fat, so we need our fats. And as a vegetarian, you will get fats from nuts, seeds, avocados, olive oil, coconut oil, but you need to be very careful because some of these are rich in omega-6, and it's very easy as a vegetarian to swing the balance very much in favour of an omega-6 and a very low omega-3, and that can create inflammation in the body. It puts the body in a pro-inflammatory state. Now, we don't, as a vegetarian, you're not getting the oily fish, which is rich in certain omega-3 fats known as EPA and DHA. And if you're not consuming oily fish, then this is one area where you do need to think about supplementing an algae-based formula which is rich in EPA and DHA to help get that balance back of the, not just the omega-3, but this EPA and DHA, which are very important for the brain, and they're very important for calming down inflammation, making things less of an inflammatory state in the body. So that is where you will need to think about a supplement. Carbohydrates, it can be very easy to pile on the carbohydrates as a vegetarian, and if you're not careful, people start to eat too much pasta, too much rice, too much bread, very starchy carbohydrates that upset the balance of our blood sugar. They can leave us feeling tired, lacking concentration. It can create a low mood. It can affect our sleep. It can make us gain weight. So it's not so much the starchy carbohydrates you need to focus on. You need to be focusing on the non-starchy, the rich vegetables. Now, as a vegetarian, it should be easy to get the vegetables, but I've met many vegetarians that don't have a lot of vegetables in their diet. So, focus in getting those vegetables, cut down on the starchy carbohydrates, make sure you're getting enough protein in your diet. And when you think about your plate, a healthy plate ratio is the same for a vegetarian as it is for a meat eater. A third of your plate needs to be protein, and nearly half should be vegetables, the non-starchy, non-root type vegetables, and about 20% should be the more starchy based grains and potatoes and things like that. And a way of trying to reduce your intake of the starchy ones is to think about non-wheat pastas. You can get some great lentil pastas and chickpea pastas, and at the same time you're going to be upping your intake of protein, which is brilliant. Make sure you're eating lots of nut butters and nuts and seeds, either with your meals or in between meals as a snack. You may want to try quinoa, because quinoa is like a grain, it's like rice, but it's a very good protein source. So it's a great way to get the balance right. But do think about your plate ratio, making sure there's enough protein from the ones I've mentioned, getting those into your diet. And finally, I just want to mention to think about, are there any nutrients that you could be missing or struggling to get in your diet? So I've mentioned the EPA, DHA, those omega-3 fats that are critical and essential to obtain from our diet, and for vegetarian from an algae-based supplement. The other thing to think about is B12. You will get some from a little bit from eggs and from dairy, but you could be lacking B12 on a vegetarian diet. You may want to think about supplementing that as well. And finally, I want to just briefly mention iron, because as a vegetarian, you will get some iron from eggs and egg yolks, but generally you could be quite low on iron. You get your plant-based iron, that's called non-heme iron. The iron from animal products is called heme iron. The absorption can be more difficult. Eat your iron foods, and the vegetables are quite rich sources of non-heme iron, and they're rich in vitamin C, which of course helps the absorption of this iron. But linked to this, there are certain things that can be negative with regards to the uptake of minerals into the body, and these can be phytates found in wheat and found in pulses, and certainly in some nuts. So you might want to think about soaking your nuts, rinsing and eating them the next day, and not eating pulses every day, because it can hinder the uptake of your minerals, particularly things like your non-heme iron, into the bloodstream. So you need to think about varying your protein intake. So it's not just consistently eating those pulses all the time. You need to think about getting them from other places as well. So I think that's it for me today. I hope you found that of interest. Do let me know if there's other topics you'd like me to talk about. Drop it in the comments section below. Hope you found that interesting. And you know, this week, every single day, I'm putting out some vegetarian recipes to give you some inspiration for new things to try that you might not have done before, because there are so many things we can do with vegetables. And the recipes I'll be putting on there will certainly have protein in them, and they won't be particularly starchy based ones, and they are full of flavour, very, very tasty. So do give them a try, and if you do take a picture and pop it into this into the group, so we can all have a look at what you're up to and what you're doing. Have a lovely week. I'll see you next Tuesday for my next topic, and have a great week, everybody. Bye.